Ladies and gentle gamers, welcome back to Be Determined. In today's video, I'm going to be ranting just a little bit about the recent adjustments to dungeons and kind of what the plans might be. Again, a lot of this is going to be speculation. It's just me kind of talking about the state of the game as far as it relates to dungeons. So if you guys enjoy, please make sure to drop a like. Let me know you want more of me just talking a little bit. And let's jump straight into it. Alright, so I'm going to be doing a little bit of Sven Slayer in the meantime. I got quite a bit of Howling Spirit Bestiary to do. But basically what kind of like brought this topic to my attention is they've done a lot of changes recently with dungeons. I'm sure the sweats of you have noticed. There's been a lot of adjustments between Ender Pearls being able to be used in Trap, to then not being able to be used, to then being able to be used again, and then getting nerfed. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, basically Ender Pearls got added into the trap room in dungeons. Like you could use them, like you didn't used to be able to use them, but now you can. And then the admins decided to remove it, but then everyone hated that, and so they put it back, and then it was all good for a little bit. And then recently they changed the way they work. So if I go ahead and grab out an Ender Pearl right now, you know, when you teleport with an AOTV, it puts you directly on the middle of the block. It didn't used to do that with E-Pearls, but now if I throw an Ender Pearl, we're in the middle of the block again. So basically that seems harmless, and it's actually kind of a buff for Kudra, but it is a nerf for Trap Room in dungeons because people would use Ender Pearls to glitch through walls or to glitch through floors and things like that. But when they added that a little adjustment in there, it just like stopped you from being able to do a lot of them. And the problem is it didn't really like fully stop people from being able to pearl and trap. I know there's already a couple of new routes that you can use to still teleport through walls. It's just different than it was previously, but we kind of got to focus on what the admins really were thinking when they did these changes, because I think it's pretty clear what they want is for dungeons to be easier to get into. Dungeons is very difficult to get into if you're just starting Hypixel, and that's kind of what they're trying to fix with this, at least as far as I can tell. Like the end game of dungeons, like M7 especially, you know, there's like so many things you have to know, especially as healer. Pre-dev is just like a whole thing. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it's so hard to learn. Once you learn it, it's not that bad, but like just getting into it, again, that's the painful part. And I think they're trying to kind of just fix the learning curve that happens when you enter dungeons. Because I mean, the dungeons is a little bit, it can be toxic depending on the party members. And I think that they're trying to kind of fix that by just making the skill ceiling lower. But they're just turning the rage of those players onto themselves, and they end up finding ways around it anyways. So it's kind of backfiring. Like, I respect what they're trying to do. It's just, it's like very difficult what they're attempting. Especially to keep the people who already learned all these things happy is just like impossible if you remove it. Just not gonna be possible unless they decide to add something else to the skill ceiling that makes it a little more interesting. Like the fact is, if they remove all of the skips like they're actively doing, then dungeon runs are gonna get a lot slower. They're not gonna make nearly as much money, and it's just gonna be a lot less fun to do. And it's not even gonna be as profitable. I mean, realistically, if there's less Necron handles in the game, that's just worse for the game because Hyperion's going to get even more expensive, and that's not good. So I think they're really trying to kind of balance out how they're removing skips but also making some things faster. Like if you didn't see recently on the alpha, they did make it so that quiz room animation goes by a lot quicker. They made it so blaze room animation is quicker, and Icefill now works the way they originally intended when they removed bomb diffuse. So that's cool, but the problem is with them like making all these animations a little bit faster, it doesn't make up nearly as much time as removing Ender Pearls from Trap did originally. I mean, of course, people have already found ways around it, so realistically, dungeons is a little bit better now if you know those secret pearl routes, but who knows how long those will stick around once the admins see that they're in the game. Like the fact is, if they're gonna take away all these skips, they do have to add faster things just to keep the in-game players happy with their run times at the very least. Personally, I think the best way to do that would just be to have a remove dialogue option on the boss fights. Almost every single boss fight would be so much faster if you didn't have to sit through all of the dialogue. Like, imagine how fast M6 could be, how fast Scarf runs could be without having to listen to him yap for a solid like 20 seconds every boss fight. And he never says anything new. It's literally stuff that we've already heard a million times before. It'd just be nice, like if you've already done your first completion, then there's like a little setting that you can change to turn off dialogue. And if everyone in the party has that setting turned on, then the runs are faster. Or maybe just the party leader, who knows. But like if they're gonna start getting rid of all these skips, like talking of skips, stonks are like the biggest skips in the game, and the fact is if they update dungeons to 1.20 like they're planning to eventually, it's not coming anytime soon, but like, you know, 2030 or something like that, stonking is gonna get removed. So like, what are we gonna do then? Like, stonking is such a big part of dungeons. That's most people's favorite part of dungeons. If you're an end-game master mode player, most people really enjoy secret routes with the ability to stonk through walls. So unless they add like a way to do that that's like intended into the game, then when that update rolls around, people are not going to be happy. But that is a problem for a much later day. Let's talk about something that's on the alpha right now, or at least I've heard it's on the alpha. I haven't seen anything in the patch notes, but apparently pre-dev got patched. So if you're a healer in dungeons, it's going to be a lot easier to run healer apparently, but runs are going to be a bit slower. Like personally, I just started pre-deving. I legit just got my first successful pre-dev like last night on my 40th M7 or something like that. So it takes a long time to learn, but once you get it down, it's hopefully not as bad. I guess we'll find out soon enough, but it's not really going to matter if people don't have to learn it anymore. I've heard people say that pre-dev is like a whole 2-minute skip. I don't think that's the case. Maybe in like insane world record pace parties, but like realistically pre-dev saves maybe 20-30 seconds because the healer just gets to do a different terminal instead, or do levers sooner if pre-dev is already done. So realistically that just can't save 2 minutes unless like the healer being freed up means that the healer gets to do every single terminal because the rest of the party is trash. But it is like a solid 20-30 second time save, which in every single run, if you do, you know, like 1,000 M7s across your gameplay, 20 seconds times 1,000, that's a solid like 5.5 hours. Like it does add up. So if they're gonna remove things like that that save that much time across that many runs, then they're gonna have to add newer ways to kind of combat that time gain and add some new ways to get time losses. Again, I do really like the dialogue concept where they just, you know, get rid of dialogue after a certain point, but there's definitely other ways to do it. They could add some sort of item for stonking when they do have to remove that, where you can like just teleport through a 2-block wall or something, or maybe just make like super booms able to be used on a specific wall in every single room. Just like add some more super boom spots. Things like that could be pretty cool, because like super boom is very like intuitive. I feel like it's super fun to do, especially seeing as you can use, generally depending on what class you're running, you can use your ability to get through the walls. Like if you're archer, mage, or tank, you can use your ability to just use a super boom and destroy a wall or destroy a crypt. So it'd be cool if they added like more ways to use super booms, or more walls to use super booms on, if they do ever have to remove stonking. But again, that's very far in the future. It's just I've heard a lot of people complaining about this. Like with all the changes to mining, it's kind of going under the radar for some people, but all the dungeon mains that I know have been really not enjoying the game, or at least not enjoying the dungeon side of the game. And most of them don't play if they're not playing dungeons, and they don't want to play dungeons right now because of all these changes. And I kind of understand where they're coming from. I understand why the admins are doing it, but it's just like, it is very detrimental to the mental health of everyone who has already learned how to do all these things and spent hours doing them to the point that is muscle memory, and then just like psych, one day it's useless. Like that's very demotivating, and I understand why. But I also understand that the admins want to make it so it's easier to get into, which is very based, honestly. Like it is cool to have some really high skill ceiling things that you can do, but being forced to learn them to get to the later stages of the game is a little bit crazy. Like, knowing how to do some things, you know, is required, you know, like clearing before secrets, like that's a no-brainer, and doing your split and all that stuff. But like pre-dev being so important to a run that if the single person, the single healer in the party doesn't know how to do it, the run automatically loses like at least 20 seconds on their speed. Like, that's a little bit crazy. Like, again, if you are a healer who can do that, much respect. It's very, very impressive. But the fact that it's like almost required in every single M7 party is kind of absurd. And I think they're trying to kind of fix that by taking some time away from other places and making some other things take more time. But again, if they're gonna remove pre-dev, they're going to have to do some crazy time removals from other sources, and I just hope that they can nail it. Again, I don't think that they're going to like completely butcher dungeons, at least not for everyone. They spent so much time on the first update in the first place. I don't think they want to throw that all away with a little shadow patch or something like that. And even if they do release something that like completely destroys it on alpha, if the entire community yells at them hard enough, then they'll figure it out. Like, I really like how they've adjusted with mining update, where originally it was just like all nerfs to everything that wasn't glaciite mineshafts, and now it's actually kind of a buff to money making in dwarven mines, and not even that much of a nerf to most things in the crystal hollows. Like, gold mining is still really, really good on the alpha right now. I think it still makes like 40 mil an hour at the top ranking or top gear requirements and stuff. But even gemstone mining isn't like completely destroyed. You just have to have water bottles that you have to drink every now and then. At least if you're going to do ruby. And then like the other methods, you know, they're not even that bad. The real big nerf now is just the gemstone gauntlet, which honestly, the problem that the admins do have a little bit now that I'm starting to see a little more is like the priorities as far as patching out things that are too OP and adjusting things like that. Like, they're getting around to it now, but this would not have been like, there wouldn't have been nearly as much outrage over the gemstone gauntlet changes if they would have done it within like the first month of Dwarven Mines / Crystal Hollows coming out. Because the only reason people are upset about it now is because it's been the way it is for years. And they invested into this item, especially the ones who invested in it recently, thinking that it would be worth how much they paid for it. They'd make that money back really, really quickly. And it's still going to make that money back pretty quickly. It's just not as good of an investment as they originally thought it was. It's still a very good investment. It's just not as much as they thought it was, because why would the admins change something, you know, like 2 years into the update? But hey, better late than never, I guess. But I do think that they can get it right. They've gotten pretty much everything right in the past. Maybe not on the first try, but with enough feedback, they usually steer the updates in the right direction. I wouldn't say every update's been perfect, but with enough patches, it shows up pretty well. Like, we gotta keep in mind, for every single nerf that they've done a little bit of a buff. And the fact is, Pearl Trap didn't exist a few months ago. Like, that just recently got added, and they did patch that like really quickly, and it's not even fully patched. There's still ways to use it, just they refined it, I guess, pretty quickly. So they are prioritizing like keeping things balanced a lot more as of late. I don't think they were as worried about it when they were first making the game, but as they come out with like more and more updates, they're thinking more about the future and how they want things to be in a year or two after the update comes out, and how everything should play. So they're trying to make sure that, you know, they don't add anything that's too ridiculously overpowered, but that does mean they have to nerf some things that have been overpowered for a very long time. But that's just my take on all the mining stuff, all the dungeon stuff. Again, this was mainly supposed to be focused on dungeons. I did kind of go off on a little tangent on mining there for a minute, but that was really just to kind of compare things. But wow, of course, that's what we're going to end off on. All right, I'm done. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. I'll see you next time. God bless.